For Rakshasas, the most important thing was daya. But for men it was dan. Why? Because men are greedy. So for those of us, or all of us, as we are inherently greedy, the important thing is to give. And that giving is called dan. And if you give your most precious, dear thing, then that thing does not become an object. If you give your kanya or your daughter to somebody, then the idea of kanya dan does not smack of giving the daughter as an object or a property. But as I go on, you will see what is the significance of dan, kanya dan. The second kind of marriage was called Deva Vivah. That if you had a sacrifice, then you could give your daughter to the priest. But okay, you did something for me, now I give you my daughter, Kanyada. There can be very significant ramifications of this and liberal ramifications of this in modern times. It can be. The third was Arsha Vivah. That you took a pair of cows from a learned person and you gave the daughter. That was all. Of course there were mantras and there was Kanyadan in all these three. And then there was the Asura Vivaha, in which a price was given to the consenting parents and father of the girl. A price was given, and then there was Kanyadan. So Kanyadan really signifies the consent of the family. In other words, Kanyadan signifies that the daughter is willingly given from one family to another family, or from one father or person to another person who will take. And then there was Gandharva Vivah, in which the man and the woman, they decided that they love each other, they cohabited, and they came back and declared that they are man and wife. And if the woman said that it was so, then she was believed. Even if the man was unwilling, then sooner or later he had to admit it, as is in the exemplified in the story of Shakuntala. This was Gandharva Vivah. This was a legitimate vivah. These are all legal vivahs. These are legal marriages. And then finally, there were two others which were condemned. That is, by abduction, which was called the Rakshas Vivah, and by rape, which was called the Pishach Vivah. But these were condemned vivahs, but sometimes admitted in cases of great compulsion, if there was no option. Now, if you look at this whole thing, then this was the practice and 8 kinds of marriages which are prescribed. It talks of a society which provides for different sections of society. It is true that most of them came to a decline. Most of them, when the classical law ceased to be practiced in India intensively from 7th and 8th century onwards, that these went into a decline. And mostly the Brahma Vivah prevailed. Now today, many sections of Hindu society have been reduced to the most disgusting conduct of killing their own boys and girls, their own children, under the pretext that they cannot love, that they cannot marry within the same village. What about Gandharva Vivah? And the modern law also, the Hindu Marriage Act, or for that matter, marriage acts, Islamic and Christian and others, they do not provide that two persons, a man and a woman, adult, well, today's even adult definition with the definition of adult, can simply say that okay, we are going to marry each other and we like each other and we are going to have all the legal rights just as those who have conducted a marriage under the Special Marriage Act or Hindu Marriage Act or the Muslim Marriage Act. So the Gandharva Vivaha present in Manu presents us with a precedent to make the present Hindu Marriage Act much more liberal. If the legal luminaries think about it, it can resolve many problems. It can resolve many legal tangles that you find that arise every now and then. And it can also resolve this big schizophrenia that the Indian society is suffering from. That if your son marries a daughter, a girl of his choice, then you say, love marriage. And Western. And there are sections of people who oppose it because it is Western. When it is enshrined in the Dharma Shastras, it has been so for a long time. I just gave you this one example. There are so many more examples in the area of property, in the area of sharing property, in the area of who can inherit property or not, which were practiced in a far more liberal way in the ancient times than in the present, because the present law is largely Eurocentric. It goes by definitions which are or which were workable largely in Christian societies or in the European societies of the last 200 years. For instance, dowry. The Manusmriti makes it very clear. First of all, there is no word in Manusmriti or any Dharma Shastra for dowry. There is a word called Kanya Dhan. That is the treasure, the goods or the wealth that a woman collects from whichever sources. And that Kanya Dhan, which the woman has, cannot be taken away, or Stridhan, sometimes called Stridhan. It cannot be taken away by the husband or the father-in-law. And Manu has very clear verses which says that those people who use it, they are liable to go to hell. The injunctions are very clear. And the Stridhan was to be transmitted to the daughter. It was not to be given to the son. And this was in practice till, I think, last 50 years. That women gave their jewelry to their daughters or daughter-in-law. It was not given to men. It may have been given to them in times of great stress, if there was a if there was a misfortune in the family or something. But as normal course, it was not given. Now, under modern law, if my mother dies and leaves behind a lot of jewelry, then I can claim. As a male, I can claim being a legal heir. Now it goes to the legal heir. There is, as far as I know, and if there is a lawyer sitting in the benches here, please correct me, there is no provision that it is only the daughter who would get it. So here is one example. There are several other examples, either in the Dharma Shastras or in their commentaries of this kind. And we have to look upon them in a serious way and make use of them. The idea of what was called Rajdharma. Unfortunately today the word Rajdharma has got so well associated with a kind of a political episode And Anglophonic press particularly thinks of Raj Dharma. That is what Vajpayee told to Modi. Now let me bring you out of all that claptrap and tell you what was Raj Dharma. It is true that the Dharma Shastras say that the king has the tejas or the energy of the devatas, but he is not divine. He has no right of divine kingship. It is not the concept of divine kingship. And he is a father to the people, because the people are called praja. Because he has the state and he makes it possible for the people to be prosperous and reproduce. Therefore the people are called a praja, because he is like Brahma, or he is like the father. So the paradigm is that of the father and the children. This is one. That is the most important thing. And what does the king have to do? The king have to look upon four things. And this is not just in Dharma Shastra, the Artha Shastra also takes it from the Dharma. And the four things are Anvikshaki, Trahi, Varta, Dandaniti. These are the four. Anvikshaki means the capacity to analyze, to compare things, to go deep into things. This is not espionage. This is analysis of what is happening in the world. Anvikshaki. Trahi means the three Vedas, the sacred text. Varta means commerce. Varta in this context does not mean dialogue, it means commerce. Dandaniti, law. And the law has to be enforced. The Dharma Shastras, Manu particularly adds the fifth, and he calls it Atma Vidya. So a king must know these five things. He must be spiritually also knowledgeable. Atma Vidya is also something he must know. As I read Manu, I find this a clear call for making strict eligibility conditions for members of parliaments and legislators in present day. If you owe a few million or even a few 100,000 rupees to somebody, if you are in debt, I don't think you qualify to become a legislator. As a matter of fact, nobody from your family, your immediate family, should qualify. If you do not have a certain level of education, you do not qualify. This is the message of Dharma Shastras to me today. The present day constitution, which believes in this fuzzy, romantic idea of an individual, just because he or she is a citizen of India, even if it is an acquired citizenship, and is of a certain age, then the person can become a member of parliament, or he can go and become a member of legislative assembly. No other qualification is required. There is no eligibility condition. This is not to say that they were unlettered and stupid kings in India, that the institute of monarchy was always. But then this is the ideal, and this was laid down, and this was very, very often practiced, as you find in the examples of dozens and dozens of kings in the history of our country. So if this is laid down for Raja Dharma, then taxation. There are many, many things. I'm skipping them all. Just taking 2, 3. Do you know how much taxation is prescribed? You can collect 50% of animals, excess of animals, from those who raise animals. But taxation on grain is only 17% maximum. 10 to 17. The example which they gave is that a king should collect tax just as a honeybee collects the nectar from the flower. That is gently. Something which they can part with delight. Something which they can give with ease. Now this says it all. And if you take a total summing up of all the kinds of taxes which were, then perhaps 20% is the maximum tax which was collected in ancient times. So low tax, very low tax, and freedom to many sections of populations from taxation was the secret of prosperity of India. I don't know if our finance ministers have seriously thought about this. This is very clearly on record, and this can be verified from various archaeological and epigraphic sources. Secondly, the courts, what was called the Vyavahar. The judges were not appointed by the king. The king only supervised if they were operating sincerely and honestly. The king was supposed to go and see, or if he could not go himself, send an appointee. But he did not appoint the judges. The judges had their own qualifications, they came under a process. There are qualifications mentioned in other texts, you should know 2 or 3 Dharma Shastras and legal texts, etc. And these were the people who dispensed justice. I suppose after hearing this, the Lordship should strike down the bill which is pending, or which has been passed but not notified, in which the politicians now get the big power to appoint the judges. I don't know what's the name of that new bill on judiciary, which has been passed just a month and a half ago. The politicians should have absolutely no role to play in the appointment of the judges or the academics or the intellectual fora or the heads of these bodies. This was practiced to the letter in India. They had no authority in appointing them. Even in Islamic period, they had no authority in appointing the head ulama or the Shahi imam. It was done in a very different manner. In any case, in the Hindu system, in the classical period, there were no appointments made in the universities or the ashrams or anything by the king. Some sort of patronage was occasionally given, but bulk of the patronage came from the people, the users. And this is something which to my mind is a very, very important lesson. Now, there are many other facets, and one can go on for a long length of time about what is there, but in the Dharma Shastras. But I think the most important thing is, first of all, to study them. They are not taught anywhere. When you do a BA or a LLB or an LLM, there may be some reference to the older system, but they are not studied closely. They are not analyzed. They are not seen. This is in stark contrast to what happens in the better universities of the world. You go to any small college in an American university, a course in political science will begin with Plato and Aristotle. And if you are doing a PhD, even in international law, I am sure you will have to study some heavy texts of Greek and Roman law. India alone has prided itself in forgetting its own heritage. Thank you very much for a patient listening.
Revealing and it opened up so much for our consideration that this is the right time to invite comments, observations and queries which many of you must have experienced during the presentation.
Sir,
Just 1 minute, they are giving you a mic so that because this is on record.
so you will categorize this marriage as in which category?
Which marriage?
Pandva,
Pandava and Draupadi is marriage.
they married
Yeah.
one girl.
For what category? What kind of? Which of the 8?
Among the 8 categories,
Which
which was that category?
Yeah. No, this did not fall in any of the 8, and there is a long discussion in Mahabharata. But precedents are cited, and it is said that you can follow these precedents. Also, what is very important is that the Shastras, they give certain prescriptions, but they also admit and approve of what is called lokachar, or the practices of certain people in certain areas. So the Shastras say that, okay, this is what we have prescribed, this is what is the best, this is Shastrachar. But there is lokachar also, and that was one of the categories of lokachar.
But is it was real marriage?
Well, it was not very common, because if it was very common, then Manu would have made it a 9th or a 10th one. But then it did exist, and it is still continuing in Himachal.
कि आपने श्री राम का उदाहरण देके कहा कि दशरथ की वो बात उन्होंने जो मानी उस समय, आज हो सकता है कोई ना माने, क्योंकि आज इसका कोई रेलेवेंस ना हो।
मैंने ये नहीं कहा कि उसका कोई रेलेवेंस ना हो,
इसका आज के समय में इसकी कोई आवश्यकता ना हो।
नहीं, देखिए, जो भारतीय दृष्टि है वो ये कहती है कि धर्म ऐसा नहीं है कि एक समय लिख दिया जो गया आदेश, वो